Hello everybody, we're back to our final step on the cold work process. Well, there's a lot of pieces to the story, as you can see. A lot of pieces, a lot of detours, and patience is the number one asset that you've got to have or develop in doing cold work. There's just really no shortcuts. It could take hundreds and hundreds of steps to get you to a finished piece like this. Each time, 1 step, 2 step, 3 step, 4 step. Hundreds of times throughout the process before you end up with anything, well, what you would call finished. This is not finished. It's going to be encased. So they'll be clear and clear. We'll see what we see at that point. This is called the felt pad, the finishing pad. This takes a whole different way of looking. This is pliable, it's thicker than the other resin. And we're going to introduce a compound here called cerium oxide. It's a powder, a lot like talc. Hello, hello. It's a lot like a talcum powder, if you will. And you're going to put it in water. It's part of the process. In fact, the felt pad without this is not going to polish your sculpture at all. It'll just, it just won't do anything. So you want to make sure that the water is in its all these little pores by just moving it around a little bit. And then we're going to take this and put some on it. You don't want to use a lot, otherwise your piece is going to skateboard right across it, hydroplane. Here we go. Now, the side that I'm going after is this side. That's the side I'm going to add a future piece of glass. So as I look through the window, if you don't have it centered, you see what's happening? My hand is doing this. So you stop the wheel and just lift it up and try to center it. You can kind of feel if it's grossly overlapping. Let's see. A little bit better. This is the polish. This is the very last step. At this point, once you look at it through there, look at that. Clarity, crystal clear. But if you look close enough, you might see scratches. Of course, we expect it on the other faces. So just for the sake of the video and the process, I'm just going to lightly go through all the faces and see how this brightens up. I can see lots of scratches through that window right there. Now you're going to spend a lot of time. Hey Gary. You're going to spend a lot of time. In fact, on this disc, you're going to spend way more time than any previous disc. Some say that you're going to spend as much on this polishing as all the other steps in front of it together. So this step right here, this is the micro dust that's going to make your piece really shine and take out those scratches. So you're buffing out scratches in a microscopic level, which is really amazing. Hello everybody. I'm balancing this tripod in my lap, so if I laugh, of course, it jiggles. So the clarity has really arrived at this point. It's very important that you turn 360 for every, what do we want to call it, every step, but they are steps. Okay, step 1, step 2, I'm watching these scratches go away right now. Step 3, it's clearing up, it's clearing up, it's clearing up. You can literally see these scratches just go away, which is really amazing. After all the work that you've done, you want to see some proof of things for your own self-confidence. Okay, we've made full rotation. Now I'll turn it around this way and do the same thing. All four movements. 1, 2. I'm just seeing the scratches go right away. It's so cool. It's mad. This is really kind of the magic disc where you can see it really come to life and pop with clarity and the crystal and the rainbow and all that stuff. So for every face, you've got to turn it. You wouldn't believe how many steps there's in here. That's why it's very conceivable. I counted on one of them, and there was over 600 steps. Then I just lost track. Hello, everybody. Hello. It's a very self-satisfying, self-image-based art form when you take something raw from an unpolished state like this and bring it all the way to clarity. Oh my gosh, is it fun. That you could do in one day. All the polishing, all this could be done in one day. From raw to this in one day. There are two different philosophies about cold work and how you're going to add more glass. Either you're going to add it with a UV glue solution, which is what I utilize, because in my teaching, that's where I'm going to start. When you talk about Hextol glue, it's a two-part component. You have to weigh it with a grain scale. Very, very sensitive. In fact, look up HXTYL on the internet and look at the labor it takes to make that work. It's also around $1,100 a gallon, and it takes 5 days to dry for every cut and polish. So a brick like this could take 2 weeks to make easily using Hextol, but this brick I can make in 1 weekend, not only from this raw, but to a finished state like this in 1 weekend. You will learn, when I teach, you'll learn what glue failures look like, fingerprints, everything, all the way down from the bare essentials. I don't believe that a person should start out with Hextol because of the level of frustration. I want to teach mechanics. Doesn't matter if you're using blue cloth, red cloth, or yellow cloth. You don't want to start out with expensive cloth. So you want to start out with some cheap cloth. Get your mechanics down so that when you walk into Hextol and higher priced materials, that you've got a layer and a level, an underlayment of confidence before you ever walk into the more demanding levels. Have a basis, have a foundation. That's the way I teach. Now, you notice that it's a clear water gathering in front. Let's turn off the light and see. Now watch, as I add a little bit of it creates that buildup, that milky white. You want to be aware of that in the polishing step, because once the white goes away, you need to add more cerium oxide. Things you got to keep track of on this one is, unlike any other step, you don't want to build up too much, otherwise you're going to skate right over it. It's going to be a paste disc. You've got to learn the mechanics. So why not, on the instant, with UV glue, learn your mechanics quickly, instantly. Build your process. Learn how to adapt, see your mistakes, see your shortcomings before you ever jump into the Hextol. It's spelled a couple different ways, I've noticed. HXTYL. Look it up on YouTube. It's a very sophisticated glue, perhaps one of the hardest glues there are. It dries so hard that you can polish it. Not every glue can say that. In fact, depending on the industrial type of glue that you're bringing into the conversation, there's not very many types that you can literally polish with a high luster to where you can't tell it from glass. So to start out, I teach the mechanics on UV glue, which would be the exact same once you walk into Hextall, except you're waiting 5 days to make the next move with Hextall, versus UV glue, it sets up in seconds. So I'm just going through the mechanics of each, or the steps, the fundamental steps of just hitting each one of these. You're not going to break an edge by doing that at all. This won't grind any glass off. At this point, no matter how you land it, polish is polish, and it won't. It's so fine that you couldn't even grind an edge if you tried to. You'd tear up this disc. Let's look at that disc. This disc is felt. It's a strange composite. It's thicker than the other disc. It has a magnetic back, and it just plops right down on your metal platter. This platter has ball bearings. It's made by Covington, and it's precision. It does it. You can't bend it, bow it. It's not going to tilt. It's on a massively strong shaft that goes down to the motor, pulley-driven motor. Bearings, everything, precision. So this is felt. Again, you got to make sure that it's wet, and you got to make sure that you see the pores, the dots looking blackish, and then in areas you can see the beginning of those pores filling up with cerium oxide. So you want to watch the cerium oxide in your applications of it. My goal is to polish this side, the left side, so that I could put another piece of glass on it. Then I'll start abstract cuts. I'll cut it at random and be able to insert more dichroic glass. Again, I have to polish both sides before I can even add the glass once I cut it. That is just, you can see it's pristine. You rely on the glare, so you're finding an edge so that you can see the micro scratches if there are any. This is foggy, so you can tell it's got a long ways to go. The foggy is scratches, very fine scratches. Once you polish them off, the clarity comes, which means you got a lot of work to do. I can see, you can see it. In fact, let's see if we can. You can see it? See the scratches? Very fine little scratches. All those have to come out. You cannot proceed. If you do proceed and laminate glass to it, all those scratches are now going to be locked into your structure. And it's going to be undesirable. Unless you're producing some effect, which I wouldn't know why you would want scratches inside, but it's very important that you keep track of all these faces. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ad nauseum. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. I'm watching that blur just melt away. Okay, now I'm not getting any clear, which means more cerium. So it's a lot of back and forth, being aware. Don't get so absorbed in your polishing that you forget to put the cerium oxide on there because that's what's really doing the polishing. It's micro small, almost like a talcum powder. You're mixing it with water, creating a tomato soup almost consistency, or a little bit less. You might have to go round and around. I might have to spend 10 minutes just on this face. Wow, that's, can you see that? That is just brilliant. You want to use a fan and have a cloth at hand there. Now I'm relying on the edge of glare, and that's a finished side. That's finished. I don't see any micro scratches because I'm relying on glare where you're going to see tiny imperfections. Let's see. See that? Try it. You see all the scratches? So this side could take 10 minutes to get it totally clear. We didn't spend 10 minutes on any side previously. Yep, this whole area here is blurred. You can see it. That's what we're looking for by angling this, keeping a cloth at hand so you can dry it off, so you can see where it is you need to go next. It's very important to build your repertoire, the way you get around, your process. This is an absolute process-driven art form. You've got to develop your way of moving around, keeping track of where you've been and where you need to go. It's a lot of remembering or just hitting every side just to make sure. But it is tremendously rewarding when you can hold one of these up and go out in the sun, and it's just stunning. See the reflections already down on the pad of the dichroic, because it's clear enough to do that. This is a very simple structure. It will become much more complicated as time moves on. I will start building upon it, cutting it, and every time you cut it, it's going to take out glass. You got to replace the glass and some. So instead of putting one piece in there, you might put two, a clear and a dichro, or clear, dichro. In other words, you want to grow where you've been. Otherwise, you're just going to break even. If you're going to cut a piece of glass, cut the brick in this place, and put one piece of glass in there the same size of the saw cut, you're not gaining anything. In fact, you're losing, because as you grind, it's going to take off glass. So you got some mechanics to think about, like, oh, no, I didn't think about that. I know. And those are the kind of areas that I'm going to address very specifically. Otherwise, you could grind your piece away and be left with just a thumbnail of something that you started out with. So you want to keep some of these things in mind. There's no heat in the cold work process. As we're doing here, we're using water and a series of discs, grinding and polishing disc in order to arrive at a finished piece of a polished piece where all the sides are polished. If this was going to be my desired shape, these edges are so sharp that I would want to break them. That's where we go in there and do it on a 45 and create a small bevel, so that it's comfortable. These points are sharp. They're pokey for sure. So we don't want those if this was a finished piece. We'd want to break those edges in a small angle and polish them all the way. This piece has got a lot of work yet to do on it, so I don't want to break any edges. I'm going to rely on them. Because the next piece of glass is going to go, and I want my edges just to, like a deck of cards, no breaks, no chinks, nothing. So hopefully this gives you an insight of the process of cold work. And when you see somebody advertising cold work on Instagram and otherwise, you now have a little bit of an idea that it takes hundreds of these steps, rotations, in order to arrive, even at something this simple. This has probably got 200 steps in it just to arrive at this. It's got several pieces of glass in there, and each one has to be polished in the way I showed you in this video series. But the outcome is stunning. Even the bees are attracted to this. If you look at some of my other videos, a finished one, I'll take it outside and the bees will land on it because it is color frequency. It's energy that the animal world relies on. We call it vibes. Not really depending on vibes, although some intuitive people, sure, they depend on vibes and the messages they get. That is just pristine. That is gorgeous. You know, with a little bit of angle there, you can get a little bit of dimension. But we haven't addressed that. We're just prepping it in order to grow it. But even through, it's got a lot of power in it already. That's the end of this one. Ah, Cinder. I've had butterflies chase my dichroic reflections. Awesome. That's what I'm talking about. Well, thank you all. Thank you, everybody. I'm putting together a lesson plan for cold working for beginners like me. I'm a beginner, but I'm very dedicated to the accuracy of my path. And as I evolve, so will the lesson plan, so will the amount of people, and so will the glass. Everything will evolve. So I'm quite happy to bring it on this level. Admit that I am a beginner. I write other lesson plans for stained glass, so it's very easy for me to think in the lesson plan mentality of things and that focus. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this series, and look forward to hearing from some of you folks that might want to get into the cold working world. Thank you all. Until we see again, bye-bye.